So, welcome back, everyone. Our next guest is leading one of the most influential voices in global wellness. As Director of Product Development at Holland and Barrett, Rachel Chatterton is at the forefront of shaping how literally millions of people around the world think about health and well-being. Everything from the rise of GLP-1s and natural weight management to brain health and gut health and edible beauty. She's got a background in nutrition and innovation and consumer insight. Rachel brings a really unique perspective on how science and lifestyle and culture are converging to define the next era of wellness globally. Please join me, everyone, in welcoming Rachel Chatterton. Thanks, Rachel, for joining our virtual stage this year for our 2025 Trend Summit.
Thank you, Charles. This is an event I've looked forward to for many, many moons in my career. So such a pleasure to join you today. So thank you for the invitation.
That's a great pleasure. Look, just a note to everyone that's participating in today's summit, if you're participating as a Trend Hub subscriber, you can discover more about the topics covered in this discussion in our 26-27 food and drink trends framework, particularly in the mega trend that we called Streamline and Strengthen, in the sub-trends within that area, in weight management, in no nasties, and in mind and body, and of course within our content stream, health watching. We're going to start a little bit big picture, if that's all right. If you had to capture the era of health and wellness that we're living in right now, I'm keen to ask you how you describe that. It feels like every decade has had its big health story. It might have been calorie counting in the 90s, or superfoods in the 2000s, and perhaps even mindfulness in the 2010s. What do you think the kind of dominant narrative is now in the 2020s?
It's hard because there's a huge amount going on in this space, but I'm actually probably going to say it's size matters. And I think that sounds quite a controversial sentence actually to start with today, because I certainly wouldn't want to be coming on thinking this is me talking about a skinny nation or anything. I think we've gone through a wonderful era of body confidence, but I think where I'm coming from with size matters is people are truly understanding their health better, and they're understanding what they need to do for their bodies, and actually really understanding that preventative health is really going to be the only cure for them if they want to live a long and happy life. And I think one of the big shifts is AI. I mean, I don't think there's a summit or a conference in the world going on right now where AI isn't mentioned. I'm sure so many of your speakers are today as well, but it's meaning that people are understanding their bodies better. And when I say size matters, there's two elements I really think to that. There's hundreds, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on a couple. So there's the overall health and well-being of somebody and the risks that come from that of being overweight. And I think we are going to come on, I'm sure, to talk about GLP-1 today, because it's profoundly changing the world. It's profoundly changing our industry that we all work in. But actually, whether you're interested in a medicated journey or an unmedicated journey, actually just being overweight and how you manage that and how you're going to get after that is profoundly going to be a much bigger part of people's mindsets as we look to 2030. Yeah. But also, if you're not even thinking about weight management, actually your overall health and well-being, I mean, you only have to look at the rise of people's interests in muscle, in fact, and actually the importance of that around longevity. And just even in the last year, I just can't believe the shift in people's knowledge in this space and the products they need and the diets they need in order to do that, and how much earlier they are willing and wanting to look after themselves is going to be the thing that really, I think, we see the significant change behind.
That's super insightful. And if you were to think, okay, so that's how we're kind of characterizing the 2020s, you sort of alluded it to in your answer, but how do you think that will sort of shape what comes into the 2030s? Do you think, is it more of what you've kind of just alluded to there, or do you think actually that can morph into something a little bit different as we look to the 2030s?
I think it's hard to say because, quite frankly, this space is moving so very, very quickly. It's hard to almost predict next year, let alone 35. But I think this AI. I mean, AI. I know I've mentioned it, but I just think people's knowledge is only going to increase. Yeah. So we are bombarded with information and statistics every single day on whether it's how much we've slept, what we've eaten, how many calories we've consumed, etc. That's only going to grow. So I think overall, just the knowledge to support people's preventative health it's only a great thing, quite frankly, but it will only increase.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking it's going to morph massively into something else, but there's just going to be many, many more avenues that people can
A greater level of empowerment
observe,
with
and react behind.
from information and knowledge then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, you've alluded to the next question. It's important, I think, for everyone that we kind of jump straight in with this. Obviously, GLP-1s like Mounjaro, they're not health fads. They are disrupting and have disrupted the wellness conversation, shifting, I think, how people approach weight management and even what and how they eat. How are you seeing them impact consumer food choices and kind of shopping habits? And I suppose the supplementary sort of secondary question is what excites you, I suppose, about, what this kind of new frontier, I suppose.
I mean, absolutely, Charles. And I think this is, if you were to ask me what's the biggest shift for the industry in the next 10 years, GLP-1, 100% is the biggest thing that's going to hit the nation and the globe. There is, there's great controversy around it, but actually when we're living in a world of global obesity, actually it's genuinely the thing that could help, but it goes far beyond weight management, actually, with the studies that are emerging. And with all of this, it is truly emerging. So everything I'm going to talk about is based on a small amount of studies because, quite frankly, there is nothing more. But, for example, at Holland and Barrett, we're working with Professor Deanfield, who now sits as part of our board. And actually, this is giving us a huge amount of richness, not only into the weight management side, but actually its bigger impacts on the health. Mm-hmm. We're entering a world where the prediction is that 70 million people in the world will be on a GLP-1 of some description by 2030. And I actually think they're underplaying that, quite frankly, when you look at the statistics of the US, where I think, quite honestly, this is common day. You hear it now. TV shows are now referencing it on a daily basis, actually. So I think the number will be much, much higher than that. But when you think specifically around GLP-1 and the impacts that we need to consider, I guess that it's so huge. I mean, whether you're on one or whether you're not, there's two massive scales for us to consider. And when about 70, they say about 70 to 80% of people on a GLP-1 will experience a side effect. So there's a whole bundle of things to get after there, whether that be gastric issues, whether that's nutrient deficiencies. And equally, if you're on one, then what do you need to be taking in order to feel the fact that you're not eating a regular diet? Your appetite is so very suppressed. So typically you're not getting everything that you should be, whether that be fiber, whether that be protein, whether that be general fruit and veg. Actually, there's different ways we're going to need to tackle that. And then when you are on one, actually, customers are, the research is really showing that you genuinely have such a profound change in your taste buds. And it's too early to say whether this is long term, but actually the research we are experiencing is a massive drop in desire for anything sweet or high fat. Alcohol drops off a cliff. So actually, when you're on one, you are craving more things like fruit and vegetables or dried fruits, nuts and seeds. And that's a great thing, actually, if you think about it, because your body is craving the things it most needs. So that's quite a shift. Not wanting to eat solids. I mean, I think we're seeing quite a profound change in the functional beverage market, and I'm sure we'll touch on it later on. But liquids, not solids, I would say, is a big part of that. And the desire for smaller portions. I mean, we're in a world where tasting menus are being seen as the answer to GLP-1 eaters in order to socialize, and restaurants really starting to jump on this, with Heston Blumenthal developing menus around this. I mean, it's incredibly exciting space. I think you asked me what excites me. I think what excites me is we finally got an answer to the world's obesity problems. And actually that opens up a plethora of opportunities to create and innovate healthier choices, be top of mind for health first. A lot of people just haven't understood what they can do, and they finally got choices to take. And I know it's not easily accessible right now, and I'm not saying this is the silver bullet, but I think what it does do is provide a louder stage for this conversation to occur. And if you're not on one, actually there's going to be a huge amount more products, I believe, that are going to help people make healthier choices on a daily basis. So I mean, it feels like a completely new era to get after. So I'm hugely excited by this space, for whether you're on one, whether you're coming off one, whether you're never going to be on one. It is a different conversation that we can all lean into.
I wonder as well if you're talking about, I guess, some of the more kind of functional deficiencies around things like protein and fiber and iron, but also is there an opportunity in this universe, the new universe, to just reignite food joy in with this in mind? I wonder as well, because that's it feels like one of the things that you start to miss out on in this, if you're medicating in this way.
Absolutely. I think there's loads of, I think that's the full circle we've maybe not quite got to, and actually we
Yeah,
will see in the next 2 to 3 years as people have successful weight management journeys. There is also a huge amount of studies to say that people will always be on them. I think
yeah,
that's a new emerging set of evidence we're reading, is that people may have to stay on them. So those changes and those shifts and those moments of joy, as you mentioned,
yeah,
will profoundly change. So I think that's going to be a very interesting space to watch. And there's so much coming out that is beyond weight management, actually, the
yeah.
impact of things like Manjaro and Ozempic, a lot of research coming out about how does it support the ability to support your cognitive health, your
Yeah.
heart health.
Mm,
Actually, they're saying actually that, I mean, I read something that sort of people may well be prescribed these generally over the age of 40 in 10 years,
yeah.
just for your overall health and to make help from a longevity perspective. So it's hugely just emerging right now, but every day there's something to read and learn in this space.
I think also, I mean, I'm literally as you're talking, just thinking it's the natural innovator in me. I think is thinking about, post, if you're on a kind of a medicated weight management program, there's also what happens afterwards, right? Products, services,
Absolutely. How do you
how you maintain that.
maintain? That's a big space right now, and particularly we're seeing it in the US where people are coming off them thinking that, well, I've done my bit, but actually you haven't done your bit. Actually, they're saying that 1 in 3 will go back to the original weight they were. So, as you say, Charles, there's so much to innovate in this space. And I think the evidence is only just beginning, really.
Yeah. And some of the numbers that we're seeing, 4%, 6% in the UK currently. Is that similar to what you're?
Very much what we're seeing and
Yeah,
innovating around at Holland and Barrett. So yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, every day you read a different statistic, but I think the only thing you can say, I sometimes talk to some people and they're like, oh, that's not going to have a profound effect. I think this is genuine. This is come. It's some would say it's coming. I would say it has come.
yeah, it's arrived. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It feels like there have been things that sort of profound shifts in our food and drink kind of landscape. This feels like one. Some of the and it's not for today, but some of the conversation around UPF. If we look back at how plant-based and the growth of plant-based disrupted the food and drink landscape forever, it
Yeah.
feels like that level of seismic shift. Those if you just think about plant-based, that's ubiquitous now, and I know there's perhaps plateauing a little bit now, but at the end of the day, it reshaped our food and drink landscape forever, and this feels like it will have that same sort of profound effect.
I would borderline argue much bigger actually
Yeah,
than
yeah,
plant-based, to be honest. Yeah, because I think
absolutely.
this not like plant-based, I think is here to say it will evolve, but I
Yeah,
just think it will the audience in which it's going to talk to is actually going to be broader
yeah,
than
yeah.
plant-based.
Well, we touched a little bit there on sort of portion size, and it leads, I think, us to kind of challenge what even is a meal. I think we're seeing this very definition of meal just as a word, evolve from the developments around snackification and grazing to functional mini meals. It feels like consumers are kind of breaking away hugely from that sort of three set meals a day. How do you see this changing in our relationship with food? And I guess what are the opportunities for innovation through, like I said, health and wellness lens?
It's an interesting one, Charles. I almost think we've been talking about this for a really
Yeah,
long time. So I do slightly wonder if I can see two shifts. I can almost see the shift towards definitely snackification, smaller portions, the loss of breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
yeah,
But at the same time, I can also almost see a world where we move back towards it.
yeah. Okay.
If we think about the fact that people, if that you not to go straight back to GLP-1, but actually if you're on a GLP-1, you're eating less.
Yeah,
So actually, you will the intensity and need to snack it goes away. So you could argue two sides of the journey, where I think some people are understanding actually the importance of starting your day well and having a protein rich breakfast, and actually more people moving towards the occasion of breakfast, versus a lot of the other side, and which is why this is a rich landscape to innovate in, is actually those people who are more on the go than ever, leading very, very different lifestyles at different parts of the day, and therefore are seeking snacks, are seeking more functional beverages. Back to, I know I've referenced that earlier, but I can't believe the way that space is moving. So I think portion within that's going to be a really interesting part of it, and actually how many calories or what's the nutritional makeup you're wanting to eat through the day is probably more the seismic shift I'm thinking in meals.
That's really helpful. And also, I guess what perhaps would have been considered a snack and something between a meal, that perhaps moving around in day parts to form, if you think about, 3 meals, actually the smaller portion moves to be one of the three, being mindful of, what we're talking about, GLP-1, portion size and kind of reduced appetite and so on as well.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And I don't know if my prediction is that it's not the loss of the meal, it's the change in the meal.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about sort of beyond pharmaceuticals. Consumers, I think, are increasingly curious. I know just from my own anecdotal evidence around sort of natural tools for weight management, whether that's society supporting fiber, plant bioactives, sugar, blood sugar balancing ingredients. Which of these do you think holds most promise? And I suppose, how are you going about sort of approaching this slightly more kind of natural, nuanced space?
Absolutely. I think it's a conversation I'm having on a daily basis with the nutrition science and formulation team at Holland and Barrett, because I keep saying the evidence is emerging, but I guess the evidence is still emerging. I guess the one that's probably got the strongest evidence to our knowledge so far is fiber. And it sounds very basic, but actually when you think about it, fiber slows down the rate at which food leaves your stomach. So actually it's there to help you support post a meal with your blood glucose regulations, reduces hunger, improves that feeling of society. So actually eating a really rich diet in food can only support the production of those short chain fatty acids, which actually helps you regulate your appetite. So it sounds a bit old hat, but I really think fiber is becoming a very sexy topic again in the health industry, which I don't think I ever thought I would say. But then there's loads of different ingredients. I mean, every day there seems to be another one that I get served on Instagram. But I think things like green tea are really interesting to think about when you think about energy expenditure and how many calories we're burning. There's a lot of evidence around, or studies going in around the levels of caffeine and how that can support your appetite. And then from a more emerging, there's a few citrus extracts that I'm quite interested in. So whether it be something like Eronium or Morosil for metabolic health. It's early days, so please don't think that I'm advocating these ingredients as big, but I think they are ones to watch. And because of the blends of flavonoids that are being scientifically studied at the moment, they are looking at whether these can actually support your body's natural production of the GLP-1. So without you having to take one, actually that natural, and that's the conversation I think we're starting to have a lot more. Some of the key hormones in these ingredients can really help you regulate your appetite, but it's very, very early days. And I feel like every day there's another one of these early. So at the moment, I'd say let's get after fiber and see where these end up.
Yeah, no, brilliant stuff. Thank you. Touched a little bit on treating and sort of, I wanted to talk about sort of smart treating. There's definitely a rise, towards indulgence, but with some kind of, personal conscience. So treats and snacks that feel joyful, but also align with your health goals. How do you see this sort of better for you treating sort of playing out? And where's the sort of sweet spot between function and enjoyment?
It's a great question. I love talking about snacks because it's definitely one of the categories that just never ever stops from an innovation perspective. And I think the way certainly we're tackling it at H&B and Holland Barrett is really healthier snacking. I think wellness is hard. It's complicated. Everything we've talked about so far, it's it's really hard to digest and understand. And actually, the biggest thing with health is it's got to become a habit. And if it's not got some joy in there, it's never going to become a habit. So I think there is a sweet spot for brands to really think about how do we celebrate natural ingredients, but with an indulgent twist to make them permissible.
Yeah.
I think you touched on UPS and a little bit, and gosh, it's been a last few months. It feels like that's really obviously bubbling to customers at the surface of customers' minds.
Yeah.
So really thinking about clean and short ingredients. And as I say, like really celebrating natural sugars. It doesn't have to always be the chocolates and the caramels. I've loved seeing the rise of things like date and seed snacks, for example, that can provide great nutrition, but with a twist. So I think that's such an exciting space that I certainly think will only rise in the next couple of years.
Yeah, most definitely. I wanted to touch on kind of a couple of macros that you already certainly alluded to. One of them, sort of fiber, we've talked a little bit about, but protein as well. They really feel like the heroes of wellness conversations right now. But it feels like consumers' expectations are really evolving, and they want them in kind of new formats. They want them to taste sort of even better, and in sort of ways and formats that enable them to build them into consumers' daily lives. How do you see this sort of protein and fiber story unfolding really over the next sort of few years?
I'm going to be quite bold actually here and say we're going to see a seismic flip of these two. So we've been talking about protein for a good 2 or 3 years. The States have been talking about for 10 years. And I'm not saying protein isn't important, and I'm not saying that it's going to go away. But I think we're living in a nation where sort of 90% of the population are not deficient in protein, and actually the only people who are really deficient are the aging population. However, 96% of the UK population is deficient in fiber. So like we've got to have that flip. So I think protein is going to remain to stay. It's almost becoming a hygiene factor. We do know that those on a GLP-1 need to be eating a protein-rich diet. So I think we'll see more liquid solutions from a protein basis, whereas I see actually this fiber maxing, which has blown up on TikTok, only kind of stay. I think the combination of the two is also interesting to think about, but I think changing that conversation is where we will spend the next couple of years talking.
Yeah, okay. No, that's really, really insightful. Thank you. You talked a little bit about, you've mentioned sort of sugar and sort of sugar reduction, particularly this sugar reduction, particularly in desserts and drinks, I think remains one of the biggest challenges, I'm sure you'd agree, in kind of health and well-being. What are some of the most sort of promising sugar alts that you're seeing, and how do you balance sort of great taste with nutritional integrity and that need, I was going to say the desire, but that need to maintain consumer trust?
It's another daily debate of ours at Holland and Barrett. I think there's two very distinct customers here, and I'm not saying either of them are right, but what we do need to is cater for them both with the overarching need to reduce our sugars. No one can deny that's what we need to do. But I think there's two customers. There's one that are very conscious of just taking sugar out of their diet, and they just want, it's all about flavor, very open-minded to sweeteners, and they're typically more calorie conscious, obviously. And then there are those who are shying away from sweeteners, with other emerging evidence coming out on sweeteners, which is a hot debate that we probably won't have time to get into today. But those who are just are happier to have a lower level of naturally occurring sugars. And what we're trying to do at H&B is innovate in both spaces, because it's two different customers. And quite frankly, health's all about choice. You shouldn't be dictated to. So you've got to be able to make your own decisions for your own body. But I think if we think specifically about your specifics in the question there, Charles, I guess something like monk fruit is quite an interesting one. It's a natural sweetener that has 100 to 250 times sweeter than sugar, but contains 0 calories. It's quite a difficult product to develop with, but it's also quite interesting for its antioxidant properties. So I think that's one to watch. But then I like to think about, and we've done a lot of work, we did this in our new Triactive range, which was our new active nutrition range we launched back in January, which is as a sports range essentially, but actually finding a lot of our customers are using this on a more daily basis. So we've used ingredients such as Hascat berry, which is a natural berry actually from the honeysuckle. It's native to places like Siberia and Northeast Asia.
Yeah.
It's got 4 times the antioxidants of a blueberry, but tastes absolutely delicious. So it's so tart and sweet. So we're finding that actually, if you can create some brilliant tasting products without the sugar through the use of these ingredients, and that's super exciting for me, both from a beverage and a snack
Yeah,
perspective.
definitely. I was just going to say that feels like multi applications for those types of ingredients as well. Snacks, beverages.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So I think we've got to play in both camps here.
I wanted to talk about in the next sort of few questions, sort of four sort of broad, more holistic, I guess, health territories, just to get your view on it. I'm not going to ask questions all in one go, don't worry. First is on
Thank you.
functional brain and kind of cognitive health. Brain health feels like it's sort of emerging as one of the next kind of frontiers. It's not new. We've been talking about it for some time, but it feels like it's really kind of gaining some momentum now from sort of a sort of focus, productivity to the other side, which is more about sort of mood and resilience. What do you think is driving this sort of surge in sort of interest, and what sort of innovations in things like functional ingredients and nootropics are you particularly excited about?
This is, I could talk for a very long time about this because we're doing a lot of work on this at this moment in time. I wish I could share more actually. But I guess the reason it's growing so much and emerging so very quickly is, I guess, it's back to the knowledge. I think brain health is sadly declining globally, and it's down to everything we're doing. So it's our changing diets, it's our lifestyles, it's the environmental and social factors.
Yeah.
And with Alzheimer's now sadly being the leading cause of death in the UK and nearly globally, we can't shy away from it. It's impacting us all so very personally. Unfortunately, we all have family members and friends who've been impacted by this. So I think knowledge is growing, and I think your brain really starts to change at around 30 years of age. And actually, if you start doing something earlier, so I've talked a couple of times about preventative health,
Yeah.
but I think consumers' knowledge is growing in the fact of what we can do earlier days. So dementia and Alzheimer's can actually start to trigger in our minds 30 years before it ever is actually emerging, which is quite scary. Well, it's very, very scary, really.
Yeah.
So actually, there's a rich space of us to innovate around in terms of how we look after our brains, and whether that be right from birth right through our years. There's a real piece around the different needs of your brain through its life stages, and actually how that's going to impact your mental performance. So in the same way, for a while we've been tracking our exercise levels, people are now increasingly tracking their mental performance.
Yeah.
And that's also another space to be thinking about and innovating in. I guess the second part of your question, in terms of interesting ingredients or functionality, a couple I guess I could mention were polyphenols. I mean, this is a really diverse range of natural plant compounds, and it's attracting a lot of attention for their potential to support your cognitive performance. There's a huge amount of emerging clinical studies around things like grape extract and wild blueberry extract that can really sharpen your attention and boost your memory. Mm-hmm. Once again, I know I feel like a broken record saying about these emerging ingredients, but I guess this is the health world and how complicated it is. And that's the job I guess I'm trying to do at H&B with a brilliant team to kind of unpick this and work out what are brilliant products that are simple for customers to understand. Another one is Bacopa, which is in fact a kind of aquatic plant. It kind of goes back to Ayurvedic medicine practices, and when you think about it, supporting your brain health through its neuropathic compounds and actually the level of flavonoids within that. These extracts, in fact, help reduce oxidative and cellular stress, which can also help promote healthier and promote healthy aging. So, I mean, it's an absolute minefield, quite literally.
I said there were four areas, and the next one we talked about was sleep and energy balance, which they feel like two sides of the same sort of coin that I think everyone on joining the summit today can empathise with, that but we all struggle with to some extent, from things like burnout. We hear a lot about the term the energy crisis or the great fatigue. how are you seeing sort of solutions evolve in that space? And again, what does the next wave, do you think, of sort of sleep and energy wellness look like?
It's a really hard one. I think this is one of the hardest ones to actually innovate around, and not to get too boring around the regulations, but
Yeah,
it's such a regulated market that it's
yeah,
incredibly hard to talk about sleep. And so it's actually a lot easier to talk about energy and actually what you
yes,
eat and drink within the day. And I think that's why we've seen the big trend around hydration, which I
yeah,
know you referenced a lot last year, and we've definitely seen a huge amount of MPD on the market this year.
mhm,
And actually, how you look after your hydration actually can almost be the engine room to
yeah,
so many elements of your health, and that really impacting your energy throughout the day, and then your ability to have a good night's sleep.
mm,
I then think, I mean, there's a lot of customers willing to try anything in this space. And I think things like magnesium biglycinate having a real moment again. One
yeah,
of our highest search terms this year on our website. It's been one of our biggest selling supplements, and people really finding the benefits of that. But then also willing to try things like natural ingredients such as tart cherry juice. We've seen a
yeah,
huge rise in sales on that. We've just launched our version of the Sleepy Girl mocktail, which was the big TikTok trend. It's our snoozy mocktail, and it's a magnesium chamomile extract with the tart cherry juice as a soft drink, as an alcohol alternative to enjoy in the evening to support having a good night's sleep. So I think that it's a really difficult thing. So I think you'll mainly see innovation from the energy side as well as the relaxation side versus the real hard facts around sleep, because it is just such a highly regulated market. It's genuinely quite difficult to do.
I completely get the magnesium piece. That's absolutely, some of your magnesium is consumed within our household on a daily basis,
Thanks very much, Banks household.
and anecdotally, it certainly works this end, so that's good. The next area I wanted to talk about was sort of gut health, and oh my goodness me, it feels like it's a wave. Well, last year or the year before, I just said probably it was the wave that hasn't quite landed. It feels like it is beginning to land now, going well beyond probiotics. We're talking about prebiotics and postbiotics and that sort of full system gut support through, the different gut needs at different life stages. Do you think this more sort of holistic approach is resonating with consumers, and what do you see, again, some of the more sort of exciting ingredients and formats in this sort of gut health space?
Oh, it's another one we could go for hours on.
All that.
Guts. It is. You're completely right, Charles. I think it's been around for a while, but it's a bit like brain health. It's incredibly difficult to understand,
Yeah,
and there's many elements to it. So I think in terms of where is it going, I think customers know their gut's important, but
yeah,
where I predict really is that people will start to get a better understanding of how your gut changes over your life, and
yeah,
therefore life stage gut health in terms of what pre and pro you need. What I certainly need in my what I did need in my 30s versus what I'll need in my 40s are completely different. And I think this is the next era of gut health. There's a lot more understanding as well of gut being sort of the engine room to your health, really,
yeah,
and its ability to impact brain, as we were just
yeah.
talking about, and that gut brain access, and how that influences both your mood and your mental clarity,
Mhm.
as well as your gut skin access. And a lot of people saying that it's beauty within, quite
Yeah,
literally. And as much as people still want to obviously look great, who doesn't want to look great? But actually the way you look being a biomarker for how your health is, and then that's then attributed to your overall gut health. So I think it's firmly here to stay. I think, fermentation is something I feel like you've certainly led the charge on talking about that trend for a very long time,
mhm.
Charles. But I think that's very much here to stay, and it's got a massive role to play alongside postbiotics, fiber again.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all linked to that brilliant gut health.
Feels like already, there are some absolute common themes coming through. We can touch on these at the end, but they're already recurring themes as we go through. The last of the four I wanted to talk about was around edible beauty, and I think, I mean, you just alluded to them in that previous question there. Increasingly seeing skin and hair and nails treated not just as aesthetics, but as biomarkers of what's going on inside. How do you think that sort of edible beauty is evolving, and again, what role does it play in the sort of convergence of two spaces that at one point felt like they were far apart, but are now inextricably linked, beauty and
Mm.
wellness?
Absolutely. I think you've touched on, I sort of touched on my previous answer, but I think it's that nurturing of us within to let
Mm.
yourself glow on the outside. It sounds like a bit of a beauty advert, but I think people are now understanding it's not just about what we apply topically. It is going to be about the diet we have first and foremost, and then how you're topping that up through supplements. I think the one bit we haven't touched on, we always talk about skin, but we very rarely talk about scalp. And actually, your scalp's got its own microbiome. And this is a big emerging space that I see really rising as there's massive advancements in understanding what your scalp needs. I was very lucky to go to a scalp clinic in Kuala Lumpur recently, and people are spending genuinely hours having their scalps analysed and then heavy treatments around their scalp. So it's no longer just about having a lovely haircut and a blow dry. Actually, it's about that inner scalp health and actually how that will impact how you feel and how you look. And I think that the same goes for your skin health and, as you say, your sort of nails, etc. So it's definitely going to be one to watch. It's definitely turning into this edible beauty world, as you say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll ask you a couple more questions, but I guess to sort of future gaze sort of a little bit, if I may. If you reflect on your own personal, but also Holland and Barrett's rich sort of foresight, we're moving towards, I think, if we sort of decode some of what we've been talking about into an era of hyper personalization, prevention, first living, and more sort of community driven wellness. I think from your perspective, would be the single biggest shift in consumer mindset that you'd expect to see over the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
I'd be really optimistic here and say prevention, not cure.
Yeah.
So I think the knowledge people have, I started by saying it, but AI is profoundly changing the information customers have at their fingertips every single day. The amount of people asking health questions to ChatGPT versus visiting the NHS
Yeah.
is just amazing, actually, in terms of what you can get. It's not necessarily the right thing, but actually when the UK health checkup market is projected to reach about 4 billion by 2033. We're seeing companies like Nico Health, where they're dedicated centres where you're getting this full body screening. Knowledge is just at people's fingertips every single hour of every single day. And I think this is what's really exciting. I mean, we talk about it as our mission at Holland and Barrett to add quality years to life. And I think Gen Xers, our millennials, are really shifting the way people view health and really getting after it at a much earlier point.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest shifts. I think people used to think of it starting to look after yourself when you kind of hit your 50s, 60s. But actually, with people now doing this in their 20s and 30s, it's such an optimistic place to be for the first time, I think. And I think just really is encouraging to see that for the first time.
No, that's really exciting. I was just thinking about my own personal circumstances and the conversations I'm having with teenagers as well, and actually being front of mind even at that age, which I certainly know when I was that age, absolutely no consideration for that whatsoever.
Likewise.
Yeah. Bit of a stretch in terms of horizon now for me. If we were to look sort of 10, 15 years ahead, what do you see as some of the most transformative wellness shifts, and the ones I suppose that will fundamentally reshape how we eat, how we live, how we age? And I suppose just from a curiosity point of view, what role do you see businesses like Holland and Barrett playing in making that future a real one, making that future possible?
It's exciting, but it's also a very scary time to be alive, I think. I think there's three very big things I would say which will have a transformative impact on what we eat, how we live, how long we live. And it's probably very obvious, but it's AI, it's climate change, and it's GLP-1 for me. I think how we live will be AI, what we eat will be climate change, and how long we live will be GLP-1. So I think the three combined just is a complete mind shift change for everybody in the next 10 years. So Well, climate change certainly isn't exciting, but I think AI and GLP-1 are exciting.
Yeah.
But we can't hide from climate change because that's the underlining factor that we've all got to face into, because none of us can shy away from that.
No. It also sounds like you've dropped a few little bits into our conversation. It sounds like you've got some exciting launches coming up over the kind of coming months. Is that something that we can look forward to into 2026?
Absolutely. It's been another busy year at Holland and Barrett. We tip into 1,000 products launched or revamped in the last 3 years. And I think there's a lot I wish I could share, Charles, but I think we've touched on a lot of these macros today. And I think Barrett provides a very unique position on the high street. I think we've got 800 stores in the UK, a growing global number of stores. And I think we provide a place for community and for people to come to get health advice. It's the biggest secret about Holland About really, is that we have this amazing team of qualified to advise. So our store colleagues are trained the standards of an A level in nutrition as a basic level.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're really struggling to get knowledge from the NHS, we are providing that qualified to advice, whether it be on the phone, whether it be online, or whether it be in our stores. And it's a story we don't tell enough, but I think it's something I'm single most proud of, is that I create, and my wonderful team creates, brilliant products to answer those consumer needs. And then you can go and find out about it, because health is personal. I think that's the role we play, is demystifying health and offering full end-to-end customer choice and helping people get what they want. Do they want to take a supplement? Do you want to change your diet? Do you want to move better in your daily life? And these are all things that customers are asking questions of, and they need help to join the dots because it's hard.
And you're right, actually. It was actually you who told me some years ago about that level of knowledge in the store. And we have a fabulous revamped store in the centre of Exeter. And I have to say, I've gone in and leveraged that knowledge, and you're absolutely dead right. The expertise is in the store. So yeah, go and talk to those Holland and Barrett colleagues. Rachel, look, we've said a couple of times we could talk for hours and hours on these topics, but I have to say a massive thank you from Team TFP and our 2025 Summit audience for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your wisdom, some of the learnings, and just as an observer and a key player in the world of health and well-being. Seriously, a big, big thank you. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure to have you join our virtual stage. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Team TFP, and Charles. Really lovely to join you, and I hope everybody has a great day.